also scholarly communication practitioners, and I would say in this instance, friends of research. It is our pleasure to welcome you to today's webinar titled The Power of Science Communication, Making Research Visible, Accessible, and Impactful. This is hosted by the Liasa Academic and Research Libraries sector. Thanks a lot, colleagues, for making time to join us for what promises to be an engaging and also an insightful session. We are aware that some of the librarians, especially those that are from academic and research libraries, most of them are on leave, but we also appreciate the time that you took to attend and honor this invitation. We would also like to extend a warm welcome to all the participating stakeholders joining from universities, research institutions, libraries, government departments, professional bodies, and also media organizations, foundations, and also various stakeholders across and beyond South Africa. Before we start, we would also like to acknowledge and sincerely thank the Liasa Academic and Research Library Sector Committee members for their commitment, their support, and also the dedication that they also provide to strengthening professional engagement, such as this platform that we are having this afternoon, knowledge sharing initiatives, and also the collaboration within our profession. Through their collective efforts, we also continue to create opportunities for learning and opportunities for cross-sector engagements. Colleagues, this afternoon, we are having various stakeholders from various disciplines as well. We would also like to acknowledge our colleagues and partners from various organizations presented today. Your presence highlights the growing recognition that communication of knowledge is not solely the responsibility of the researchers or librarians or even communicators, but it's a shared endeavor that requires collaboration across various sectors and also disciplines as well. Before we start, I would like us to also reflect on a simple but also a very important question. What happens to research when it remains unseen, unheard, or even misunderstood? Today's session provides an opportunity to reflect on how researchers, librarians, and also institutions can work together collaboratively to share knowledge, not only the knowledge that exists, but that also reaches the people who need it most. Before we proceed, colleagues, I'd also like to share a brief housekeeping rules. Kindly make sure that your microphones are muted unless invited to speak. Once our guest speaker has engaged us, we'll also have an opportunity to engage with her and the rest of the delegates that are joining us this afternoon. We also encourage you to use the chat option for your comments, your questions, suggestions, and also recommendations, colleagues, to enhance this endeavor or initiative of science communication within our various institutions. And should you experience any technical difficulties, please make use of the chat function, and one of the panelists or organizers will also help you where possible. It is now our pleasure and privilege to introduce our speaker colleagues. I will briefly read her bio so that you can have an idea of who is engaging us this afternoon. Nontobe Komchali is a science communication specialist and published author with over 19 years of experience in journalism, science communication, and media training. She is a former education reporter at the Star newspaper. She has worked across various organizations, including Good Governance Africa, Flow Communications, The Conversation Africa, and the University of Pretoria, where she served as content hub editor and led the institutional newsroom. She's the founder of Magalela Media Services, a company that works with universities, research councils, scientists, and thought leaders to translate complex academic research into clear, compelling public-facing narratives, such as press releases, feature articles, profiles, speeches, and also opinion pieces. Magalela Media also designs and delivers science communication and media training workshops that develop researchers and academic capacity for public and media engagement. Non-Tobaco's work also ensures that academic knowledge reaches the audience who can engage with it, understand it, fund it, shape policy around it, and also act on it. We are also delighted to acknowledge that Non-Tobacco has been a Frey Media Foundation mentee through her mentorship booster program, and she was also a participant in their skills development seminars. She was also a finalist in their annual Pangisile Mjali Grant Award for Public Relations in Public Health. Colleagues, from what the bio says, these achievements speaks to her passion for meaningful communication, public engagement, and also ensuring that knowledge reaches beyond the academic spaces. As librarians across various sectors, researchers, scholarly communication practitioners, we often speak about research impact. Today, we have the privilege of learning from someone whose career has been dedicated to transforming complex research into stories that inform, influences, and also inspire action within various communities. Non-Tobacco, we are also honored to have you with us this afternoon. Colleagues, please join me in welcoming Ms. Non-Tobacco Mchali. Nonto, the virtual floor is yours. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much for the wonderful introduction, Dina. I'm going to put on my video for 2 seconds and just wave and then switch it off again because the connectivity is acting up of all days. But such is life. I'm so happy to be here. And this is particularly meaningful to me because I am a homemade bookworm. My dad started buying books for me long before I could read them. So libraries have always been such a wonderful world for me because I could get lost in so many worlds. And since I was a child, since as a child in primary school, I often opted to go to the library during the school breaks instead of the playground. So it feels so special to me to be in a room where people that are part of a world that I love so much operates within. And having said this, and also Dina mentioned this, I'd love for this to be an interactive engagement because I'm definitely not going to speak an hour and a half. So please, let's all, benefit from the collective wisdom in the room. If I know that there'll be a session for the Q&As after, but if you have thoughts to share, I don't mind if you pop up your hand during the presentation and then we can take the conversation forward. So I will just jump straight into it. Dina, you can let me know because I've been sharing the screen.
Yes, if you can just put it on presenter mode. Yes, thank you.
There we go. Perfect. All right, Dina has mentioned a lot of what we're here for, and essentially trying to highlight the golden thread, which is either between academics, communication specialists like myself, journalists, and librarians. There's the golden thread that connects us all, which is we are in this ecosystem of developing science, developing very, very valuable knowledge. And so we're here to discuss why communicating that knowledge matters. Because as we know, traditionally, academia has communicated its science and its outputs in a very specific way. Now we're here to, explore how further that can go and, highlight and capacitate ourselves with the tools that can make the research go beyond just academia and land on the ground in front of the funders, in front of the policymakers, in front of the community people that need it. So let's jump straight into it. What exactly is science communication? The wording is quite self-explanatory. Science communication is essentially communicating science to a non-scientific audience. So that is sharing scientific and technical insights through platforms that people can access and in a language that is easy to understand. So when I say through platforms that people can access, that could be through radio, a radio station, through television, through people's social media timelines, wherever people are, and whichever media that they are consuming and have access to. Science communication is reaching people exactly where they are and communicating that science in a way that those people can understand. So let's explore. I'll give you an example of what this looks like practically to take something that's technical and within a certain discipline and us broadening its influence to make sure that it reaches the people on the ground. So, as many of you would know, earlier this month, South Africa launched the Lenacapavir HIV treatments medicine. And as we know, and it's an HIV treatment medicine, as I've said. And as we know from the data, the people who are mostly infected by HIV infections in South Africa are adults between 15 and 45. But if we zoom into this data, we see that women and girls aged between 15 and 24 are among the most vulnerable when it comes to HIV infection. So within this context, what would science communication look like? So now we are communicating a scientific and medical breakthrough in a way that people would understand, particularly those that are impacted by this the most and that are most vulnerable. So science communication in this case would be explaining exactly how the treatment works, how people can access it, and that should be also explaining the fact that this is not a vaccine, but it works more like a birth control. So if you're HIV negative, and you can protect yourself by using this medication against infection through sex for as long as you stick to the required dosage. Science communication in this case would also be telling people that this is not, this only protects you against HIV infection, not other sexually transmitted infections. So communicating all of this scientific and technical knowledge in a way that people outside the medical sector would understand and appreciate how this treatment applies, and is relevant to their day-to-day lives. That practice is science communication, and this role is not played just by science communication specialists like myself. It's the libraries that ensure that the research outputs that is backing this breakthrough, that this scientific breakthrough is based upon. It's ensuring that it's accessible, because if people, community members, journalists, policymakers, if they can't access that research, it's the impact, it would go nowhere. It would just stay confined within that space. Also, scientific communication in this case would be the journalists who can access that knowledge, which would be accessible via, librarians that are open access. It'll be journalists, accessing that and then interviewing the experts who are, who backing this information, and then communicate that information in a way that people would understand, in a way that the general public would understand. So a journalist sitting down with an expert and asking questions in a way that people outside of that space, of that discipline, would understand. And also in this case, science communication is the researchers themselves who are involved in this, availing themselves for these interviews. That's very important. Because if you don't avail yourself in interviews and don't engage in your public platforms and engage with communities, and also use your own platforms as a researcher, that's whole mechanism as well, your individual
Sorry,
endeavor.
doctor. Sorry to disturb.
No
The
worries.
slides are not moving on our side. I'm not sure if you're still on the main slide, the first one.
I'm still on the main side. Don't
All
worry.
right.
I'm almost done with this one. Thanks, Gina. I was at the point where saying that it's the researchers also availing themselves. That practice is science communication. And science communication is also, the posters for those people who go to the clinics and go to the hospitals. It's the posters that you'll see at your local health facility that are written in vernacular language with illustrations and languages that you can access. So what this whole process that I've just explained, it shows us that science communication and the process of democratizing knowledge requires an all hands on deck approach. It's everybody, not just the journalists, not just yourselves as librarians, not just yourselves as academics. It's everyone needs to be involved. So why is science communication important? Um, it's important because clear and transparent information that is communicated, especially by authorities and sources, helps combat misinformation and allows people, and this includes communities, policymakers, industries, to make informed decisions. And that's the key here, enabling people to make informed decisions. And science communication involves researchers, and librarians working together to build public science literacy. And this is very, very, very important in this day and age because it enables people with the capacity to evaluate the information that they see, evaluate evidence, and be able to distinguish between what is reliable misinformation. What is reliable information and misinformation. And this is very important because having these tools and equipping the public with these tools enables them to make informed decisions. And we all know when we know better, we do better, particularly in cases like this with the example that I gave, where just the knowledge of the fact that a medication, a treatment, something like this is available to you can be the difference between life and death. And by doing this, all of us collectively in this ecosystem, by equipping people with science literacy skills, we are helping the public develop the skills to evaluate information critically. And it's that this is very important as well. I keep emphasizing this point because we all know what we see when we scroll through our social media timelines. Sometimes you can't tell whether something is factual or infactual, whether in fact the person that's speaking is real or not. There is a lot of information and a lot of misinformation. And I feel that now more than ever, science literacy skills are highly, highly, highly important. And I've seen firsthand as a journalist how people having access to knowledge, credible information, how that not only enhances their lives, but as I mentioned, can be the difference between life and death, particularly when it comes to matters of health. So, and science communication is essential because it ensures that publicly funded research benefits society by addressing local and context specific on the ground issues as well as global challenges instead of that knowledge just remaining trapped in academic journals. And I want to make this point that universities, public universities in particular, are a public good. And that applies to you whether or not you're in the lecture halls or whether or not you're enrolled in a course or a degree. We should all benefit from having state universities in our country. And science communication in particular ensures that public funded science ultimately benefits the public. I'm going to repeat that. Science communication ensures that public funded science ultimately benefits the public. So now I want us to explore in our quest of ensuring that our scholarship and the outputs that academic institutions put out there, what are the difference between the various metrics that the institutions use to measure, engage, and assess the impacts of science? So many of you in this room would know that, traditionally what used to matter, and it still does, but what held more weight in academic publishing was tied to influence in people's career advancements was bibliometrics. And as many of you know, this is a way to measure the impact and the reach of your outputs using data such as citations, where your work has been published, whether it's in a journal, a book chapter, a conference paper, and also H indices are part of the bibliometrics. Now I find, and slowly, the sector is turning and waking up to the fact that as much as the bibliometrics are important, we're seeing a shift towards acknowledging that alternative metrics are just as important. And alternative matrix, as many of you would know, these are the indicators that are used to measure the reach, the societal impact, and the engagement of your research. So, what this looks like is news coverage. And now, especially with the fact that people now consume their news online, now it means that, you know, what you publish as a scholar and turning your research paper into an opinion piece, it won't just be, you know, read by the people in that local community through that local newspaper. The fact that now news are being consumed online generally means that anyone, anywhere in the world can read about your research and about the work that you do. And this is global exposure. And it could lead to funding opportunities. It could lead to you, you know, receiving national or even international collaborations. So maybe collaborating through research or collaborations through you being invited to speak at conferences. And this exposure also connects scholars and researchers to decision makers and funders. So alternative metrics are very important. And these kind of metrics also include, you know, the commentary and engagements that we see on social media that's based on your work and other social media platforms. And alternative metrics also include the citation of academic work in non-scholarly outputs. So that would be company reports, and policy documents and things of that nature. And my view personally is that both of these are important. Academic research does need to be peer reviewed and published in credible academic publications. There's no argument there. And scholarly work does need to be cited and collectively used as building blocks to enhance our understanding of what we know and what we don't know about a specific discipline or a field of study. That is still very important. And alt matrix, on the other hand, they enhance the contribution that you as a scholar make to your field because they take your research beyond the sector and the academic circles that you operate within. And this visibility makes your research outputs and insights, which is grounded in years, sometimes even decades of rigorous inquiry. The visibility enables your research to reach people, sectors, and communities that can engage with it, that can fund it, that can inform policy around it, and apply it in practice. So Altmatrix give your research legs to go way beyond where it could be if it was just merely published in an academic journal or where you only spoke about it at conferences, where even conferences themselves, particularly those that academics attend, it's essentially peer-to-peer communication and interaction. It's barely ever outside of that space. So even when you speak on a stage at a conference, you're speaking in a language, you're speaking to your peers. So it's jargon, it's technical language that a average, day-to-day person wouldn't understand. And Altmatrix make your work go way beyond that. And that should be the entire point, because what good is you applying years into rigorous research and generating knowledge and insights if all where it's going to end up is in an academic paper that doesn't reach the people that need it the most and can act on it? Like, what would be the point? Is that the point of research ultimately should be to the benefits of the public in one way or another, or a sector, or us, or it's enhancing our knowledge in a way that's where we can see how this science, how this technical thing is applicable in our lives. And this is where the connection between science communication and open access becomes apparent, because research outputs, you can gather the bibliometrics, but if people can't access that, if I can't download it as a journalist, if I can't download it as a scholar elsewhere, I can't generate alternative matrix if the research is locked behind a paywall. So as a journalist, as a policymaker, as a community member, if I can't download the paper and engage with it and use it, then there would be no point. Is anyone speaking? Oh, I thought I heard something. So this is where the importance of libraries and librarians that support open access becomes very, very important. So things like open access and institutional repositories provide the bedrock for science communication, because no open access means no alternative matrix, as I mentioned. So now that we have established, the importance of the exposure, let's now the exposure of scholarly work beyond, scholarly circles. Let's look at how researchers, librarians, and higher education institutions can communicate the research more effectively to a wider audience. Now that we've established the broader societal value of scholars and universities making their research visible, let's see now how being intentional about visibility of your research influences your career, particularly as a scholar. And I've mentioned this before, in addition to positioning yourself as an expert within your field, visibility positions you as an expert to people beyond your field. And we now know that organizations like the NRF, as well as international funders, are increasingly asking for a public engagement or a science communication component when people are applying for funding. So this makes science visibility and impact. It's no longer a nice to have. It's no longer something you can ignore and put on the side. Sometimes your next opportunity depends on the fact that you have been intentional about taking your science out there to the people beyond just academic publications. And scholars and institutions now need to show their impact and play an active role, as I mentioned, in turning the evidence and data that they have collected into tangible outcomes and connect the dots and show how this data and evidence has led to societal change in one way or another. However, having said all this, we do need to acknowledge the fact that the reality is that researchers in particular are often focused on their research, publishing. Many have teaching responsibilities. They're busy with grant applications, funding proposals, and that leaves little time to think about science communication and public outreach, because that needs time. And engaging with media and preparing your scholarly outputs in a way that the public can consume and understand requires a time investments that not many people have. And that's just the facts. And this is where I want to highlight what I feel is a very underutilized resource, particularly within universities, because all universities have departments that, in fact, it's not just in the central university structure. You also find these departments within the faculties, and sometimes even within the departments, where there are media liaisons, there are communication managers and marketing managers and spokespeople that deal with all the stuff that we're talking about in taking research out there. All universities have a communication and marketing and public relations department. And these departments, their mandate is to connect the institution to the public, to the media, and other key stakeholders. It is their role to identify and communicate newsworthy and innovative research, key institutional developments. They facilitate media engagement, and they support academics with public communication. This is their job. There are entire departments within universities whose job this is to do. And also part of their job broadly is to help protect and engage and enhance the institution's reputation through accurate and strategic communication. And I want to pause here. I know we're going to have a Q&A, at the end of the presentation. But as I mentioned earlier on, I feel that this resource within universities, that academics within the universities themselves need not pay for. You need not hire a person like myself, who's an independent service provider, to assist you with this. The people in the university can assist, and there are services that they offer. And I know this because, as Dina mentioned in the introduction, I worked within the university space, and I still do. The only difference now is that I do it as an independent service provider. But I know for a fact that in addition to the mandates that I've described that these departments are responsible for, they also offer training. They offer media training. They offer science communication training. They offer social media training. So if, for instance, you are an academic and you received a call from the ENCA, let's say the Ministry of Police has, released the crime stats. We all know that makes news. And a journalist in a newsroom would want an expert who can speak on that, who can tell us, oh, it's okay, here's what this data is telling us. These were the crime stats last quarter, last year. What's the bigger picture? What does it mean when we see an increase in these type of crimes and a decrease in these type of crimes? So as a journalist, and I'm speaking from experience, I would go on a university's website because I now need to write a story. I've got the data, I've got a quote from the minister, I've got a quote from the MEC, I've got, a quote from a person who's been a victim of crime. Now I need an expert to say, we'll see, what does all this mean? What does this data tell us? I would go to a university's website, look under the communication and media section, and find what is often referred to as an experts list. So this is where universities list the professors and the academics whose area of speciality is a certain topic. So if I'm looking in this case for someone to help me make sense of the crime stats, I'd go to the law faculties, the people who are dealing with criminology and things of that nature. So those resources and that kind of training is available at universities. So I would like to ask before continuing with the presentation, and maybe I can pick on you, Dina, because you and I have been talking. From where you sit as a librarian and as a scholar yourself, do you find that people, the people that walk into the library and that you service, whether they're academics or fellow librarians within the other institutions that you have access to, do you find that people are using their internal resources that they have at their disposal at the universities, to help them communicate their science? Do they know that there's such training that is offered, as I mentioned? Do they attend them? Do they not know about them? I'd like to hear from the room, and Dina or anyone else can respond. Do you guys find that you are able to access and use the resources that are available to you within the university context? Because those resources are there, those people are there to assist. Do people take them up and use them? Have you guys attended any of the sessions that perhaps the university's communication departments had offered? I'd like to just take a moment to pause here and get a sense from the room. Because yeah, I feel like it's a huge resource that's just barely used up, and it's important.
Thanks for putting me on the spot, and I'm glad that there's quite a lot of my colleagues here that are heavily involved in providing research support. But from my
Mm,
experience, I would believe that there is lack of awareness in some
mm,
institutions regarding these services that are being offered, or even training initiatives. But I also think it also starts with building those relationships with these departments within our institutions, where we can
mm,
work collaboratively and and initiating services where we can develop new programs or projects in collaboration with these stakeholders, so that we can enhance the service that we provide, not only for us as librarians, but also
mm.
to our researchers as well. And I think some of my colleagues here, there's one of our colleagues that is very passionate about science communication. Sizveli, Miss Chesha, sorry to put you on the spot. Um, I'm not sure if you'd like to say a few words regarding this.
Good afternoon, Dina. Good afternoon, Nantobeko. Good afternoon, colleagues. You're putting me on the spot, Dina, on this one, but thank you for this opportunity. Thank you for the presentation effort to tackle this area. I would say it's critical, as Dina alluded, is partnership. We have partnership with the corporate relations and marketing team, and we have quarterly meetings and targeting specific subject experts in each faculty or research entity, where that goes with also research visibility and impact projects. As we profile researchers, that data informs us of visibility. And of course, that goes with access that will lead to impact. Through this collaborative effort, we are able to support researchers in terms of promoting their work. Our colleagues from corporate relations, marketing, they actually capture areas impacted by their research into the institutional news media. However, on the ground level, when we interact with researchers during consultations, researchers have, I would say, phobia, unknown phobia of having confidence in, talking about their science. This is the area that the speaker touched on, that if we have experts that can prepare researchers, to be confident, and also the use of social media as well. Recently, we've profiled one of the researchers, and he was just open to us, telling us, it looks like I'm bragging when I'm talking about my science. And yet, it is that bragging that is needed out there that will transform society. And so far, that is our engagement. And also from the library side, where we have the institutional repository, a platform where we can then uh, archive, I will call science communication products, such as, for example, the infographics, the storytelling articles, the podcasts, video, short video, and video abstracts. The list goes on. So if we disseminate such products, of which those products are actually complementing, those peer-reviewed publications, and we try to create traffic to those peer-reviewed publications, and that really improves visibility for more impact. The area that we have not started, which we are considering, is to partner with the departments that the speaker mentioned, communication, to support researchers in this area. Perhaps we can include them in our committee, the committee between us and the corporate relations and marketing. It has just started, colleagues. It's not something that has been in existence. It's just new. We are learning and we are growing in this process. Thank you, Dina. Thank you, colleagues.
Thank you so much for the inputs. I'm happy if there are other hands up, I'm happy to hear because we have time. And as I mentioned, that this is an important aspect because I feel like it's a bottleneck and it's a low hanging fruit that academics can use without without further strain, without adding additional plates, additional, work on their plates. So if there's anybody else, I'd be happy to, have that input. And then I can proceed in also giving the tips of how, in addition to the, using the institutional resources, how academics themselves on an individual basis can, contribute to the endeavor of making their scholarship available. Is there anyone else before I proceed?
Yes, there's a hand from Berenice. Please go ahead, Berenice. I see that you are unmuted, but we cannot hear you. You are muted again.
Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear. Thank you.
Okay, it's my connection that is a bit of a problem today. Um, um, we are mostly an undergraduate college, but I do a lot of research and I do and I do presentations at rehearsal. And I have a major problem with myself that I do all those presentations, but every time when it comes to the publication part, I struggle to meet the deadline for submission, and I realized that I am too busy doing the actual work as a cataloger, but my interest is very much into speaking and doing research, particularly about disability and libraries in South Africa, being a person with a disability myself. And then I must now admit here that I was asked by last year to submit my presentation, and then again I was too late. I think the professor gave up on me, and I and I never uh, submitted my presentation for publication. I want to ask, can you just give me some advice? I thought this year maybe I should cut down on my make it part of my program, my daily program, and rather work in the afternoon on the research and leave the actual cataloging for the morning, and all. Can you give me some advice? I do not have a master's degree, and I don't have neither do I have a doctorate, but I do a lot of public speaking. I've been doing a podcast now in March about whenever I speak, libraries is always part of my life. And I heard what you said about our institutional marketing department, and they have keep on telling me they want to come and interview me, and then I think no, I'm not at that level where maybe it's all to do with myself self image, or because I don't have the doctorate and the master's that's keeping me down, or it could be that maybe I shouldn't have been married and kids. It could be that, and struggling with a disability all in one. That yeah. Let me give you time to answer.
No, no, no. None of the reasons you mentioned are, reasons to not get the help that you need in terms of the publication. You need not have a master's degree, or you have knowledge that you have gathered through lived experience
Yes.
and through the work that you do and your professional history. So I wanted to say, for instance, you mentioned, missing the deadlines when it comes to submitting work or your presentations. So in this case, prior to the deadline, obviously, try not to make it last minute so that you can also provide the colleagues at the communication department to assist you. Submit the rough drafts of your presentation and ask for editing services, because there are editors within those institutions. In
Yeah.
fact, within those departments, and in fact, how they work, because I was actually at the desk where all these queries came through. And we had a very limited number of writers and research and editors, rather, within the department. So the university has a database of external service providers, and that's the world that I now occupy. So I'm registered as a vendor, as a service provider to the university. That's when something lands on the editor's desk to say,
Yeah.
please edit this for so and so, they need it tomorrow, and they don't have the capacity, they can just open the database, find the editor, and I'll be on that list, send it to me and say, Nontobeko, please, we need this done by tomorrow.
Yeah.
and it will be done. So if the internal capacity is not there at that time, there is a list of service providers that are there that the university department can call on to assist. And that would be of no extra cost to you as the academic being serviced or as the, as the practitioner within the university. It's the
Yeah.
department that pays that. They are the ones that pay us as service providers. So you ask them, and if they don't have the internal resource, or if it's too last minute, or whatever the case may be, they pass it on to people like myself. And we write, we edit, we do the things, and you send it back, and then they send it to you, and Bob's your uncle. So
Yeah.
please make use, please make use of those capacities, because
Yeah.
I, as a service provider, we're sort of like the second line the second in line. So if the editor
Yeah.
inside the university is busy, if the writer is busy covering, a summit where the VC is speaking, they can get a writer like myself externally to say, please write this for us, please edit this for us,
Yeah.
please interview this, person. They've published something and they want to turn it into an opinion piece. Please boost write an op-ed for us. We do all of those things in support of the universities. So
Oh.
please make use of
Mm.
those services.
Nonto, can I
Yeah,
also add?
can I just mention one thing? I think, my biggest problem is now I have a disability. It mostly affects my legs, but also my hands. And this is my problem. I type too slow. I would rather speak I was thinking of recording my paper and somebody else can just type, all those, because that is, I think that is where my major problem is lying, that I'm not, the older I become, I'm already in my, the slower I am. I never passed my typing speed at school or what, and now it's even worse. So that is actually the thing that is that is even disabling me more, that
Mhm.
my speed is very slow.
Ma'am, you can use, there are digital tools that you can use to speak to, and then they transcribe. And
Yeah, but
so do you find that have you tried maybe perhaps going that route, or if not yourself, if you aren't in a position to type something that's too long, have someone such as maybe an assistant or an intern from the departments that I'm speaking about. They'll be
yeah,
able to
yeah,
just come in with a recording device, listen to you, interview you, you speak, and share the knowledge that you need to share, and they walk away with the audio, they transcribe, and they repurpose it for whatever the outcome is, whether it's
yeah.
social media content or a news item. There are tools now, technologies, in addition to the people that are there, that can assist us in executing the things that we need to do as communication practitioners.
Okay, no, no, I understand, but I've noticed that I've tried that, but it says it hears something else from me than what I actually said, and that's why I immediately stopped doing that. So what I do is I
Mhm.
speak my own language, my own on my phone, and I record, and then
Mhm.
I would actually, in my case, I would use a student assistant or
Mhm.
a colleague of mine. Yeah, but
Mhm.
I take notice of what you have said. It's it's the time frame. I need to start
Mhm.
early. Thank
Mhm.
you very
Mhm.
much.
You're welcome. You're
Yeah.
welcome.
Nanto, if I can just briefly add as well that Berenice can also collaborate with other colleagues as well, because when it comes to academic writing and research, it's not supposed to be um, an isolated process, but it
Mhm.
needs to be a collaborative effort where the workload has been shared. I'm also talking from experience as well, where you'd find that you are collaborating with other colleagues. It makes the work easy to manage, and also in terms of her reaching the deadlines as well. You know, blending her unique insights with the team's collective momentum. This can also transform an isolating race against the clock into a shared intellectual journey, and also leaning on peers for energy, using technology, which we've just highlighted now, for efficiency, and also remembering that asking for accommodation is a standard tool for equity and not a request for a favor. So, you know, just sharing the work will make it easier to manage. Thanks.
Thank you, Dina, and thank you everyone for the inputs. So as I promised, in addition to, you know, highlighting the role that the institutions or your faculty or even your departments can play, I just want to touch on a few, you know, tips and tricks that as a scholar yourself you can use to just make, give your work legs and give it legs to run beyond the, the academic space or the specific discipline that you operate within. So what this looks like, and one of the colleagues mentioned that researchers have a phobia, have a phobia of media, and I know this from a fact. I'm a journalist, well, recovering journalist, and it's always been interesting to me whenever I engaged with academics during that time of my career. It's different now because I've been in the higher education sector for a long time. But, you know, even in mainstream media, scientists are or were, you know, illustrated as these mad men with hair flying all over the show and just, you know, stuck in their labs and having zero social skills. So there's also just stereotypes that are there, and the fact that, you know, some scientists, you know, just based on their personalities, would rather just be left in their lab and not have to deal with human beings. And, you know, those are the realities, those are the characters that we're dealing with. But that is why the resources are there. And for those that are you know, trying to just dip their toe in public engagement, I would suggest, maybe just as a start, take your latest publication. So let's say something has been published that you wrote in the South African Journal of Science, or you've recently, you know, made a presentation at a conference and it's something that is relevant and timely. Take that research paper or that research output and try to write it in a way where it would be something that can be published in a newspaper, in your Daily Maverick, or on News 24. Sit down with the paper, and I'm going to give you 3 questions, like 3 tips. So, to start, and the tip here is, you are no longer now writing a journal article, remember, you're now writing a news item. And a news item starts with the news. Ukuthi kahle kahle yini le? What is this? What is new? What is the finding? And normally in an academic paper, that gold, that gem, that story, that angle, that so what factor is in the conclusion. Because you guys love the literature review, and then you love the background and the sample size and all of those things. And then in the very end, you tell us what the finding is and what the new innovation is. So when you write a paper, take your conclusion and start with it. When you write a news item, rather, take your conclusion and say, this is what I've found. So 3 questions. Start with what your research is about, what your key findings rather are about. Answer the so what factor. Make me as a reader who's not in your discipline understand the relevance. Make me understand, why should I read this? Why does it matter? Why should I care? Why is it important? Explain to me, say, this is what I found, these are my key findings, this is why it matters, and this is what needs to be done going forward. So if you take those 3 questions and you write plus minus 300 words for each answer, you have your very first rough draft of an opinion piece that you can take an email to your comms colleague and say, colleagues, here's my draft. It's based on this paper. It's based on this representation. Attach that paper, attach your draft. please assist me with editing and media distribution. So what the colleagues will do is polish it up, clean it up for you. Or if they don't have the time, they're going to send it to someone like myself to say, please edit this. This is what it's based on. Here's the paper. Here's the news item that the researcher has written. Please edit it. I myself, as a journalist, will be able to assist you in mining the info that is relevant to the public and writing it in a way that will make the news editor stop and not ignore the email that they get. I will, as a journalist, as a former journalist, I can identify the news angle and help you polish that. And then when I'm done with the paper, I send it back to your university. They have a long media list that they send out to people. I mean, the long media list that they use to distribute the research outputs. So whether it's maybe, let's say you are in agriculture, and your work would be, relevant to publications like the Farmers Weekly and things of that nature. So depending on the subject matter, they can either send it to the whole media list, the whole data set, or if it's specialized, send it to particular media houses and particular media outlets that they know would find this interesting, that they know that this is something that's within their realm, that their readers will find interesting. So you could just sit down with those three questions. What are the main findings? Why does this matter? What needs to be done going forward? You have your very first draft of an op-ed. You can send to the comms department. They edit it for you and it's distributed among the public. And that's it. Now your paper lives in a space where people outside of the sector can read and think, oh, I had no idea. Or someone reads who's in high school and thinks, this is interesting. I had no idea this could be a career, field. And it could spark, you never know where it could land and what it could spark. And it could be read by a politician who thinks, oh, wait a minute, our policymakers are working on this. We need to get in touch with this person. So just doing that, just writing, never mind a TV interview, just sit behind your desk, write that first draft, and you're good to go. And other ways of also, utilizing media, particular. I'm sure you guys would be familiar with the publication called The Conversation Africa. Dina mentioned that I worked there. I worked there for 4 years. I was a commissioning editor for the education section as well as environment and energy. So what the Conversation Africa, platform is, and the Conversation, by the way, is based in 6 regions. So there's a Conversation Africa, there's a Conversation Australia, where it was founded. There's a Conversation US edition. There's an Indonesia edition. There's a France edition. I'm leaving one out. There's the Spain edition. So what the Conversation does, and the Africa one is based in at Wits. I used to work there. So we have an office at Wits, we have an office in Lagos, we have a colleague in Ghana, and then we have another colleague in Senegal. So we have colleagues across the continent whose sole purpose is to find research that is from African academics, link up with them, and then help those academics write the opinion pieces that I've just described. So it could be an opinion piece, or it could be something based on a specific research finding that is based on a latest publication or whatever the case may be. So what the Conversation does, it pairs you with a commissioning editor, and all of us are former journalists. I say all of us because I still feel like I work there. So all of the people that are there are commissioning editors who are former journalists, and they will take you through the process of converting the research into a science communication article, like I explained. And the beauty with that publication is that, number one, the process is very collaborative. So they work together with you to say, you wrote this, what do you mean by this? Please explain it in a way that, a matriculant would understand. So they basically convert academic work and technical, dense scientific work into accessible language, but without, losing the scientific rigor. Because I know that that's a concern for many scientists to say, you're dumbing down my work. It's the process of communicating your science to a non-scientific audience is not dumbing down your research. it's writing it or communicating it in a language that people would understand. So instead of you using a term that is jargon that would only be understood by a limited amount of people within your discipline, I'm going to find an alternative word so that everybody can understand, so that if a 16-year-old reads the article, it makes sense to them. So it's a very collaborative process. And at the end of the day, if the researcher does not approve that now the article can be published, it does not get approved. So that kind of takes care of the phobia, because we understand as media practitioners that, often scientists retreat from engaging with media because they've had experiences, they've been burned. They've had instances where they feel like they've been misquoted or their work wasn't understood and it just led to controversy. So the conversation in particular, and I'm speaking about them because I worked with them for 4 years, they're very cognizant of this. And so the process there is very collaborative, and we don't publish until you say so. There's an actual button that you as the writer, as the author, need to click to say, okay, I approve for publication. And the beauty with that platform as well is that it's open access. So media, not just, from Joburg or South Africa, continental media republish the work. So very often conversation pieces you would find in the Mail and Guardian, in the Sunday Times, in the Daily Maverick, and News 24. And we also find them in African countries, in media, in localized media across the continent. And actually, that experience of seeing the thirst of mainstream media, the thirst that they have for academic written work that is written by experts, that is credible. The fact that our work, the work that we put out there, was taken up and republished so much, showed us that there is a thirst for people reading information that they can trust, because it says there it's written by Prof. So and so at this university, and this is their area of speciality. And I keep going, back to the era that we now live in, where you can't trust what you see on your social media, whatever you read. And a lot of people don't have the skills to fact check and verify and all of those things. So reading something that is written by a person who's a scholar, who is affiliated to a university, there's the trust element. So there's also that option that you can use to write. As you put, the work in, as you work this muscle of communicating, maybe one time where you have an op-ed and then it's read by a journalist and they call the university and they think, you know what, this is a really interesting paper. We'd like to interview Prof. So and so based on what they have written. And if Prof. So and so is feeling nervous but would like to, but is not sure how, they can run to the comms department and say, okay, guys, I've just received a request for an interview tomorrow. Can you just prep me to, prepare for this interview? And we can give you tips off the bat to say, okay, if it's an online thing, this is how you present yourself. This is how you sit down. Make sure there's no, noisy background. Don't wear printed, clothing on TV because it's going to look funny on the screen. Don't swing on your chair. If the journalist asks you questions that veer off, what you are here to talk about, which is your area of speciality, this is how you navigate that and bring it back to your area of speciality and steer the interview in the right direction. This is how you can navigate it. And if they ask you something that is completely outside of your realm, say you do not know. Say, this is not my area of study, this is not my area of speciality. However, I would like to bring to your attention 1, 2, and 3. And now you're back on track. You're back on what you're here to talk about. So if you have an interview tomorrow, I can sit down with you today and say 1, 2, 3, this is what you do. And it would just ease your anxiety to say, okay, I can do this. And that's a first step. And as with everything, the more you do, the better confidence you get, the more reps you put in, it becomes eventually second nature. And you'll find that it's actually very enjoyable. You will find joy in seeing people way outside your discipline being fascinated and curious and wanting to fund and back your research. it's also exciting for the researchers themselves. And I see it in the conversation, especially where I used to see it in the conversation, especially with first time authors. They write once and then the bug bites and then they come back to us. Next time, it's not just me as the commissioning editor calling them to say, Prof, I just saw your paper. Now they tell me ahead of time to say, hey, I'm about to publish. This is the the pre the the drafts of what the paper is based on. Let's write something so that by the time it comes out next month or next week or whatever the case may be, the published paper will come out, the published academic paper, and then the piece in the conversation or the piece in the media would come out at the same time. Once they get that experience and the bug bites, they become believers. And that's the beauty of science communication, because it also opens up your eyes as a scholar to the value of your work, to the magnitude of the value, because you often tend to be caught up in the weeds, caught up in the discipline, caught up in the sector. And once you lift your lens and then you see how far your work can go and the impact that it has, you'll be now the one coming to knock at my door and saying, listen, let's do this, let's do that, please help me edit this, please help me edit that. And that way the phobia will slowly will slowly erode, and you'll find that it's an actually very enjoyable process. But it's baby steps, baby steps. First write, and then as time goes, you can push yourself, just nudge yourself a little bit out of your comfort zone, just a little bit, a little bit. And as you get the feedback, and when your eyes are open to just how valuable your work is and how far, wider it's needed, you'll be the believer. You'll be the ones coming to us to say, here's something I've written, please publish it. So please, let's make use of the media resources that are available. You'll be surprised at how, as I said, that it ends up being the academics themselves who are very excited to share their work and avail themselves for public interviews. I see that the time is running. I'm almost done. So I want us now to see, or rather explore. Now we've spoken about the communication part, right? So I want us to now, hone in on the fact that libraries as well, and yourselves as librarians, play a very, very, very important supporting role in putting the institutional research, into the spotlight and ensuring that that research is discoverable, that people can actually access it and use it beyond the institution. And so, within the context of science communications, librarians can support research visibility through institutional repositories, digital collections, and open access initiatives. I've mentioned this. And librarians can also help researchers increase the reach and impact of their work by improving discoverability and access. Libraries can also curate and preserve research outputs, data sets, and scholarly records as well. And they can also connect researchers with the tools and the platforms that track the citations, the engagements, and the broader societal impact of their work. So, as librarians, you guys play a highly, highly essential role in ensuring that research remains visible, it remains accessible, and it remains useful long after it's been published, long after the news cycle has gone. The infrastructure that libraries have give research work not just accessibility but longevity. Longevity as well. So the role that you play is very, very important. And while communication managers and media liaisons can help bring research into the public conversation through media coverage and stakeholder engagement, rather, librarians can also create the systems and the pathways that allow people to find, access, and preserve and engage. That's the most important part, and engage with that research in a longer period of time, because research, as we know, most of it is it's evergreen. Barely do you get things that are, it's not like a news item that's time sensitive. As a journalist, I can find a research paper that was written say 3 years ago, and the likelihood is that it's relevant to what's happening at this day and age. So research is evergreen, and the infrastructure and the institutions and the people like yourselves, the librarians that house that knowledge, you are housing something over a long period of time that has long-term value. So, in this way, librarians aren't only custodians of information, but you guys are active enablers in research visibility. You are active enablers in knowledge exchange and long term impact. So, your role is of the utmost importance. As I mentioned earlier on, open access, available data sets, the infrastructure and the work that you guys do is the bedrock of science communication. Because as outside of the institution, the policymakers, the journalists, we wouldn't be able to reach that information if you guys don't put the infrastructures in place and the initiatives in place, such as open access and all of those things. We would not be able to do what we are able to do had it not been for the work that you guys do. And that is where my talk ends, and I'm happy to continue for us to continue with the Q&A session. Over to you, Dina.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Nontobeko, for such an insightful and inspiring presentation. And I've just seen on the chats, colleagues are asking if you'd be willing to share your presentation with us.
Sure, I'll do that with you, Dina, and then you'll pass it on.
All right, thank you so much. So basically, your reflections have also reminded us that research is not merely measured by citations, but also by conversations sparked, communities reached through science communication, and also policies that are also being continuously influenced, and the lives that are being improved as well. And as you were engaging with us, you also challenged us to think differently about the responsibility that we share in ensuring that research becomes accessible, understandable, and also meaningful beyond academia. So colleagues, without wasting any more time, I've noted one or two questions on the chats, but you are more than welcome to raise your hand to engage with Nontobeko. I see there's a hand from Nare Mashiani. Please go ahead, Nare.
Thank you, Diana. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear, sir.
Nontobeko, nice presentation. Much appreciated. I'm quite passionate about scholarly publishing, but I have a barrier, which is the cost of publishing a journal article. So I understand science communication now that you presented what it means to us, but as a journalist, obviously you're not a librarian. I'm telling you, Nontobeko, the biggest barrier for me or for my students is affordability. It is expensive to publish a journal output in a journal publisher. So I want you to talk about that because this is what I'm interested in. How can we promote the so-called open access so that we can remove these barriers of accessibility in higher education? Science communication, as you said, it is about providing access through several media. But in terms of students, that is postgraduate students, making their research available on open access platforms, it involves costs in terms of publishing in a journal. So how can we bypass those barriers? As librarians, we advocate for open access. I think many librarians will agree with me. So as a journalist, Nontobeko, what is your message about enabling scholars in higher education to afford this publication course? If you approach a journal publisher, it can take up to 2 years after approving your manuscript to actually publish that journal article. But the bottom line is it is not cheap, Nontobeko. Or what is your response?
Sure. Now you're putting me on a spot on a topic that is outside of my area of speciality. However, as someone who operates within the, who's in the ecosystem, it boggles my mind when you look at just internationally the structure of rather of academic publishing, because it takes time. Often it's edited and peer reviewed, the peer reviewed articles or the peer review mechanism. It asks for academics to do it or peers to do it for free. And the work that would be published in a publication from a university, the university would then have to pay for access for that in order to get their very own, something that came from them, something that came from their own scholars. And so just that structure for me boggles my mind, and I see no logic in that. However, we do know that institutions do have, well, some, because not all institutions have
Mm,
the same financial muscle. But universities do have a budget where they enable either the students or the people within the institution. So whether you are a scholar or a student, because your email address is .ac.za and it ends with that institution's name, you will have the access to the repositories and the access to the work. That is the responsibility of an institution, to enable the people within that organization to access that knowledge. But broadly speaking, I find this is a very just oddly political thing, where people work on their papers and their scholarly outputs, and then they have to pay for it to be published elsewhere, and then they need to buy the access. It boggles my mind as well. um
can I follow up
sure.
what I said earlier? I'm aware that public universities get funding from the National Research Foundation.
Mhm.
I think, do they call it NSF, something like that?
The NSF, yes.
Yes. But the point I'm trying to make is that I'm a librarian working for a non public university, and
Mm,
I'm
mm,
at a disadvantage because I cannot support the actual scholarly publishing of research outputs on the open or the paywalled platform, simply because I don't have funding to support that publishing. So I'm saying, with public universities, they get funding, so they encourage their students to ensure that they submit manuscripts to a journal publisher, and then the cost will be covered by that university. I'm a
mhm,
librarian. I'm a member of LIASA, but it's difficult for me to support the actual process of scholarly publishing for my
yeah.
learners,
Mm,
simply
mm.
because I don't work for a public
Within the
university.
university.
Yeah, when
Mm,
I raise these issues with experts in information and library science, they tell me that what they know is that non-public universities are looking for the bottom line, that is the profit. So that
mm,
is not a good answer, because I'm a librarian. I'm a professional librarian accredited by LIASA. I want to
mhm.
support my postgraduate students in scholarly publishing. So I'm looking for answers from LIASA. Maybe one of the organizers can say something, non-tobacco. Thanks for your response.
Thank you.
Can I
I
also
was about to
interject?
throw the ball to you, Dina.
Yes, but I unfortunately I wouldn't have answers as well. I've opened up a discussion on the chats. Perhaps some of my librarian colleagues from non-higher educational institutions can also take a bite here,
Okay,
because this is a
thanks,
complex,
guys.
yeah, it's a complex challenge, because you find that even for some um higher educational institutions, funding is also limited as well. So open access funding on its own, it's a bottleneck. as well. So our colleagues can also engage on the chats further. Thanks.
Dina, I see that there's a hand up from Nare.
Nare,
Oh,
is
let me
this a
lower my
negative
hand.
hand?
This is a,
Oh, it was I thought it was somebody
Okay.
else.
Any other questions, colleagues? With regards to the discussion that we've just had, any other questions that you'd like to pose on science communication? Let me just check on the chats. There was one question from Lerato. I think it was when you were engaging on the let me just quickly go back. When you were engaging us on the conversational pieces and feature articles, she's asking if can unpublished papers from honors or postgraduate diploma studies also be featured in such outputs?
I'll speak on the conversations perspective in particular. So there, the criteria is that you must have a PhD, because that shows you've got, skin in the game, and you must have published in that regard. Or if you're a PhD candidate, you can co-author with your supervisor. So that is the one key criteria. However, there's an exception that is made in the sense that some academics or just experts that are affiliated. And the other criteria is that you must be affiliated to a university, because the conversation itself doesn't have the capacity to screen and vet anyone who claims to be an expert and has a PhD on such and such. So what they do is that they only work with academics that are affiliated to a university. And this affiliation could be full time, or you could be a part time lecturer. So it doesn't have to be the fact, you don't have to be fully employed within the university, but you could be a visiting lecturer and all of those things. So that counts as affiliation. So number one is have a PhD or be a PhD candidate. And in that case, co author with your supervisor, have an academic affiliation. And then the other elements I wanted to mention is that at the absence of a PhD qualification, but you have a significant amount of research outputs and you make significant contributions to your sector, we do make an exception where experts do publish, but ultimately you still must be affiliated to a university. And there's one example that I'm thinking about here. There's a gentleman by the name of Anton Harper. He's at the Wits School of Journalism. And at the time, I can't speak now because I worked at the conversation from 2018 until 2022. At the time, Antoine didn't have a PhD, but we published him because he has been in the media industry for aeons. In addition to being a practicing journalist and establishing newspapers, he had skin in the game for a very long time. So he practiced journalism and then he taught it for decades at Wits. And although he didn't have a PhD, we published his work based on just the contribution that he's made. So if you have a large body of work that shows, Uguti, you really are an expert in this field and you're affiliated, they can also consider you for publication at the absence of a PhD. But that body of work has got to be significant to give you that leeway. So those are the conditions, particularly with the conversation, for who qualifies to write for them.
Noted, Nonto. There's also a hand from Kwaita. Please go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you, Dina, and thank you, Nonto, for such a captivating and highly insightful presentation. And good afternoon, everyone. I have a question. I'm sitting here and thinking that what AI tools can make our life a little bit easier when it comes to this. But I'm aware that it comes also with the responsibility, whatever tool one may use. But do you have any recommendations of AI tools that can help us or even researchers to convert their scholarly output into communication and science?
AI tools are tricky. They're helpful as well. I'm gonna put that right off the bat. But we all know about chatty hallucinations, and not just chatty, they all hallucinate. It's Gemini, it's all of those. So it depends. The tricky parts with AI tools, and I'm actually I'm neck deep into the research about AI tools because I'm actually creating an app for my company to do just that, to train the tools and enable them to assist researchers do exactly what I was preaching about for the past hour and a half. So AI, it depends, number one, because AI tools are broad, it depends on what it is that you're looking for specifically. So some are good at writing, and as you know, as others would know, as coders would know, engineers would know, others are good at coding. If you're a visual person and you're working with audio and arts and media, others are good at that. So you kind of need to play around and see ukuthi for your for for your intentions, for what it is that you want to do, which ones are good. So you'd find the ones that are good with writing. I'm obviously not going to mention specific ones because anyone can find them useful. People say Claude is good with writing. I'm a writer and I do utilize AI tools for my work, but I jump between a few because I find that sometimes when I feed something into one, it gives me something entirely different. And sometimes I pit them against each other. So the ones that I use, perhaps I can speak about this and people can, take it forward however you wish. I go between two mainly, and sometimes I dabble into Claude. So it's Claude, it's ChatGPT, and Gemini. But the thing I want to emphasize very, 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 very specifically is that AI tools, what you get, there are large language learning models, and what they do is string patterns. So, because they have access to immense amount of data, so they connect the dots. And so you might give them a very specific paper and say, here's a paper, help me convert it into a news article. It's not gonna read the word by word and ensure that it only sources from your paper. So that's where hallucinations come up. So if you were going to use that, which I actually encourage people to use because they're very helpful, is you must be diligent about verifying and fact checking, because Chetty can hallucinate from here till Monday and sound really, really convincing. So any output that you get, you must read and verify. I've heard of cases where lawyers at the High Court have been in trouble because they used ChatGPT to assist them in putting together their arguments. Well, not ChatGPT, let me not lie. They used an AI tool, it was never specified. They used an AI tool to assist them with putting together their arguments, and the AI tool cited cases that were non existent. And with law, you guys would know that they use cases that have been judgments that have been made to say this is a precedent in this particular aspect, and so based on the precedent set, because of this judgment at this time at this court during this court case, this is what we argue for. A lawyer was embarrassed when the judge asked them about a certain case that did not exist because they did not verify what the AI tool gave them. So use them, but be highly, highly diligent about verification because they're very helpful. And so I find that particularly with writing, you may save time writing or structuring the paper, whatever you're structuring it for, or it could be a presentation. Maybe you're not even writing for news; it could be a presentation. So you could save time with the writing process, but you would have to spend time editing that and ensuring ukuthi what comes out is actually factual and it aligns to what it is that you wanted. Never, ever, ever take something as it's spewed out by the AI tool and then forward it and use it and publish it. So with AI tools, they're handy. Play around with them. They're very, very helpful. But verification and facts checking are the most important thing. The most important thing. Because if you publish and then you mess up, it strips away your credibility. It's very dangerous to use AI generated knowledge, or rather AI generated outputs, without verification. So use it, but no, ukuthi the time you spend writing, you're gonna have to spend editing and verifying. That's where I can leave it with AI. But please do use them. I'm not trying to scare you with the verification, but I've seen how people's credibility has been stripped because they didn't do the due diligence when it comes to the verification of the work that they've put forward. So please play around with them. They're very helpful. They're very helpful.
Thank you, Nonto. I am answered. I am answered. Yes, yes. And of course, those are the challenges we are dealing with as librarians, the ones that you have mentioned, and really one needs to thread carefully. And yeah, I'm looking forward to your own tool for science communication.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. I'm actually gonna pop it in the chat because we have yo guys building an app. I thought it was one thing, it's another. But I have a landing page and people you can sign up to access it when it's ready. And also in that actually I created a framework that academics can use to turn their work into news items, and that framework is in the link that I'm going to share. So it's got those three questions that I said you guys can use when you're writing or when you're sitting down with your with your academic paper. And so please use that. And it's free to download. It's a free resource. I'm just going to pop it in the chat right now. And if you click on the website and you go to the icon that looks like a funnel, you'll be able to download that framework.
Thanks a lot, Nanto, for sharing that. I see it's already on the chat, and also with the advice that you've just given in terms of using the AI tools, and that we should rely on them with a healthy dose of skepticism as
Yep.
well. Yeah, so I'm not sure if there are any further questions, colleagues. We have run out of time for our scheduled session. If there are no further questions, colleagues, this brings us to the end of our session. And as we draw this session to a close, we would also like to extend our heartfelt appreciation to Nontobeko for sharing her expertise, her skills, her experiences, and also recommendations with us today, especially in terms of enhancing science communication. Some of the institutions are still trying. This is a new thing that they are trying to initiate. So I believe that after this session, we have really gathered valuable insight from this session, and also the presentations, the slides that will also be shared will also assist us further as well. Nontobeko, your reflections have really been insightful, and you've also challenged us to think beyond publications, beyond the citations, and also beyond traditional measures of research success. Thank you to each and every participant who joined us today and contributed to the discussion. Your engagements reflect the importance of this conversation and the growing interest in ensuring that research remains relevant, accessible, and also impactful within our societies as well. We would also like to once again thank the Liasa Academic and Research Library Sector Committee members for their commitment to creating opportunities such as this one for professional growth, collaboration, and also knowledge exchange. Colleagues, we would also like to leave you with one final reflection. Knowledge creates value when it is shared. Research creates impact when it is understood. Then science communication also ensures that distance between discovery and society becomes shorter. As librarians, researchers, and also knowledge professionals from various institutions, may we continue to champion not only the creation of knowledge, but also its accessibility, its visibility, and also its transformative potential. And on behalf of the Liasa Academic and Research Library Sector, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. We look forward to engaging with you again in future. and have a wonderful afternoon and stay safe and warm. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.